Good morning, everybody. It is a lovely Tuesday, and it is time for some more mapping. I'm Graham, also known as PS Gamer or Panzerlion, and uh, we are continuing to do development on Grafis Hill, the first encounter zone that I developed for the 90-minute village, which was the last mapping project that we did. So where we left off last week was we had this lovely encounter area. We had 7 points of interest on it, and we made up something for these bones right here, and then we left off. We were working on this area right here, building a little ruined sort of area for people to adventure in. So, on whatever platform you happen to be watching me on, whether it's Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, or on Streamlabs, please like and subscribe. It helps grow the channel and all that sort of good stuff. And let's get to it. Is my microphone working? Yeah, right on. Nice. Okay, so got some trees, got some bushes. The basic outline there. Let's show the grid. Okay, that's not too bad. So I think I may change up this flooring here. It's like it looks nice, but it is a little bit confusing with the addition of the grid without it like being fit to the grid. Well, I could do that too. That almost matches one for one. So this is one of the challenges you may run into when you're doing stuff, especially if you're working with gridded floors like this, and that or gridded floor patterns, and that's that it can make things a little bit messy when you start dropping a tactile grid over top of it. So it's not a big issue, but it is something to watch out for. Why would it? That's weird. I was definitely not on beds when I left off on this last time. That's weird. Let's see here. Watercolor battle mats. Yes. Wall torches. Okay, so let's add a couple of urns in there. And so I'm just going to put a bunch of wood down and then select this and bring it in. So what I want to give is the impression that there were doors and stuff in the area, and a little bit of a feeling of internal walls that were made out of wood. Love how the recycling truck like never fails to come by whenever I'm streaming. It's amazing. down a layer. There we go. Move up. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. Get rid of that one. Move that up a layer. There we go. Don't think that looks quite right. Gravestone. Oh, nice. So give it a feeling that something happened here. Something probably not that great. And got a shattered tombstone there. Got some other ones there. A ruined building up here that's coming together nicely. Let's see here. No, don't need equipment and tools. Looks like something nice was out there at some point. I don't think Gothic Horror is going to help us too much. Well, the occult chandelier is a nice touch. Yeah, what do we got for sure? Standard trees, standard bushes. It's not a haunted house. Don't need dead trees. Blood. Just put a blood splat down in the middle just to confuse people. I do like cobwebs, though. So by adding those cobwebs in, it's kind of a nice way to communicate what sort of danger might be here. So walls and stairs. I've already used a bunch of those. Don't need the water stuff or the wizard. Here we go, broken furniture. There we go. Alright. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Let's see here. That's a pretty cool texture. Let's see here. Let's go to Open Catalog. And we'll come down here. So, there we go. Make squiggles. Fine. Drop the size. No, it doesn't blend well with the grass. So this is one of those things. Hey, how's it going? This is one of those things where you sort of have to figure out what's going to look good. That doesn't look too good or too bad, except for because it's forest floor, it has a branch there, so it doesn't really match up too well. I think this will work. Just to show there's something going on. Yeah, there we go. All right. 121 changes. I'm going to hit that save button. So this is a nice looking map now for sort of like the classic spider encounter. You've got a ruined area, you've got some gravestones out here, so you could potentially do like an early, like a low-level sort of like undead encounter or something like that. If you wanted to, you've got spiders as an option. It looks pretty beat up, but there's signs that things, used to be a lot nicer. Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm just going to take a look back here. Yeah, just sort of it's hanging out. So debating putting a trail there, but I don't think it really needs one. The place is supposed to be a little bit overgrown, so I'm pretty happy with that. So hit the save button already, so we can go back here and create a new map. Watercolor battle maps, choose style. I believe I used, yeah, these ones have been landscapes. Guess I'll find out. Awesome. Okay, so this time we're going to do it all up properly. So we're going to go to add, and we can just go to, so this is actually adding ground over top of everything. There we go. Paint, foreground, open the catalog. And what are we? So we did a little ruin. We've done that. So let's build the campsite down here now. So that was actually down in the light grass area. Bigger. There we go. Okay, so it's all painted up. We've got a campsite, a log. Kind of got the scope of the hill going along the top right here. So let's go here. Stamp tool. Open catalog. Let's see if we make the hill look steep. Not really. I think I need to. Okay, so is that all there was for hills? Composite green. Well, I guess it makes sense. I mean, so work at 175. That looks all right. Nice selection of shapes. There we go. So, yeah. So up that way is the way up onto the hill. Yeah, there we go. That's looking a lot nicer. So, for anyone who's been watching for a while, you may have realized that I do really enjoy, for building hills, just laying a bunch of chunks out and then stitching them together because I find it's easier to visualize. There we go. And I'll come up here and open the catalog, switch to the dark grass. Yeah, there we are. Drop that size. All right. Now come down here, select a stamp. I saw a campfire. So got a few there. Where's the other campfire I saw? Oh, okay, that's for one inside dungeons. Ah, that's fair. Do they have logs? Tree? There it is. Tree trunk. Why not? So as you may have guessed, just looking at this, this is a fairly cozy sort of encounter area. Whole idea behind it is that this is a place where like the players were either resting and get sort of ambushed, or they find like bandits or something hanging out and chilling out. So it's supposed to be small. Well, I don't know, those trees are pretty good size. Might shrink this guy down a bit though. There we are. Foliage. Plant. There we go. Wow, that is a big plant. Medium floral plants. Okay, let's play around with those a little bit, switch those around. There we go. What else we got here in stamps? Make this look cool. Wow, those are some rickety looking tents. That's not. Wow. Oh, that is grim. That is grim. Okay, I'm going to put a couple of tree stumps down while I think about that. Wow. There we go. All right. Yes, this last month has been quite the roller coaster for stuff with D&D and all of this. That has been interesting, definitely interesting. Let's throw some of these rickety tents down. Wow, these things are. I would not sleep under a tent that looked like that. Wow, it's not even kind of waterproof. For doing like myself, and I know a lot of other people too have been trying to get their thoughts in order and I've been doing all sorts of videos and thought pieces and everything else like that, and yeah, um, trying to make sense of it all is pretty astounding. I did find, oh, what was that person's name? I can't remember their name. They were a an analyst. They're like a business and leadership analyst, I believe, who took a look at sort of like the long term, like what Wizards has been up to, and um, they have pans. They have fried eggs, but they don't have pans. Oh, pots and pans. Here we go. That just looks silly. Um, anyway, so this person, can't remember the name here. I'm probably going to be putting together like a little, putting together a post on Facebook linking to their series. They did like an epic, like I think it was like 10 or 11 part series, looking at the issues that Wizards is facing from their perspective. And I have to say, I was pretty impressed overall by it. In particular, the disconnects that are happening at the different levels of leadership within Wizards, from what D&D is and is capable of versus where they want to move it, which is at like the higher levels, and then down at the lower levels, where they're trying to move it and where they're trying to develop it. And I think what I found most interesting about it was I think they were spot on in their assessment that Wizards doesn't fully understand their own product now, which I doesn't seem to make sense, right? I mean, like, how can you be a company like Wizards of the Coast and not understand the Dungeons and Dragons product as a thing you've been doing for over 20 years now? But as he explored it, it made sense because what he noted not first and foremost, one of the big things he noted was that Wizards scaffolding. Why would I need scaffolding? Was that it is how do you put it? Most IP, as we understand it, so things like books, video games, stuff like that, tell a story. And within telling a story, they generate value and interest in the people who are interacting with the medium. But Dungeons and Dragons is primarily a story creation medium. It's not actually built to have stories in of itself, and so he noted there's a misunderstanding of how their IP actually worked, and how very little IP they actually had within the context of Dungeons and Dragons. You know, like they have monsters, they have characters, they have all sorts of stuff like that. But the main focus of their content has always been to put the tools in other people's hands so they could tell their own stories. And that made a lot of sense to me. I'm going to put a tree there instead of having those bushes. There we go. Yeah, like that. And then, did I have a trail going up? I do. And it was just really a sort of like a profound moment of understanding for me as he talked about it all, because it made sense, and it also helped make sense of why things weren't going. Oh, I don't like how those look. With why they were trying to like claw things in and control them, especially with their move to. So your comment here, D&D isn't the book; it's the pen and paper. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that. 100%. Yeah, you've nailed it right there. D&D isn't the book, but it's the pen and paper. It is a medium to tell stories with. It's not a story medium in of itself. And they're trying to treat it as though it's the other type of medium. So that was really good. I do wish that he'd gone more into what I see as the sort of the disconnect. Bread, pen, broken stuff. Oh, stoves and so on. Nice. Okay. Um, I wish that he'd gone into what I see as the disconnect between um, the content that they're putting out versus the content that they're that seems to be popular. Because that's something that I've noticed a lot is that Wizards wants like they want those big hits and the income and everything else like that, but they're not putting out the corresponding levels of content to bring that in. So, for example, their move away from lore that happened last year. Was it last year? Wow, like time really does mean nothing right now. Ooh. Anyways, their move away from lore in favor of trying to put it all into the hands of the end user to develop. I think that ties into it. And yeah, he went on a whole bunch. Anyway. So long story short, look on Facebook at some point later today, and you'll find a post where I'm going to link to all this person's assessment of what's going wrong at Wizards, because I think it's very valuable to understanding the situation that we've just gone through with Wizards, the OGL and everything else like that. And also a really good warning about where things are bound to move to, because in his opinion and in mine as well, this it's not over yet, and this wasn't. I know a lot of people are saying this was a victory, and this is a win for gamers and all that sort of good stuff. Time to hit that save button. This is going to be Grafis Hill campsite. That it's, it was a victory for us and everything else like that. But the thing is that like Wizards, they haven't talked about any of their future products. Like they're not like through all this stuff, like all the things about 1D&D, all the things about, or sorry, not 1D, all the things about 5e, the OGL, SRDs, Creative Commons, all sort of things. There's never been a mention of 1D&D. Like it's all been very 5e centric. Curious about how the success or failure of the upcoming movie may play into it. Absolutely. I am 100% certain that they went for their nuclear option with 5e, releasing it as a Creative Commons, and releasing it as, and saying that the OGL 1.0 alpha are going to remain in place. I am absolutely certain they did that literally because they want to guarantee the movie is a success. Because one of the things that was starting to ramp up just before they did that was a lot of people were talking about boycotting the film. Like a lot of people were talking about it. And I think that right now is their nightmare. Because they've already had one failed cinematic release back in, what was it like? 1998, 99, something like that. Maybe 2000, can't remember. Anyways, they already had a failed release of a movie to theaters, followed by some like direct to DVD, not so great films. This is their chance to like make it big, and like it doesn't even have to be like a blockbuster. It just has to do well, and the concept is proven. And they've already signed that deal for a D&D TV show. Um, so they're moving into that level of multimedia stuff, and I'm absolutely certain that they wanted to kill any word of boycotts or anything else like that as fast as possible, and that's why they did that. And yeah, um, I think it all. I think a lot of it's going to tie back into the information or lack thereof. Okay, so I like how this looks. So now I'm going to. Sorry, I'll go back to the D&D stuff in a moment. I'm going to skip. I'm going to not skip out. I'm going to clone this now and increase the transparency for the stuff that's on here, so that we'll have that same effect that we had on the map the other day, where you can either use it like this. See, like come over here, show grid. Let's. So you can like come over here, show the grid, and use it like this, or you could use it with a or you could use it same thing with grid, but with transparent plants, so the plants sort of are acting more of a more as a rough terrain. Um, yeah. So back onto today's topic there. Um, Through all this, they have been absolutely silent about the. Let's see again. They've been absolutely silent about all their future stuff, and it's all been focused very much on 5e. And when you look at the people that they're bringing in to their executive levels, whether it's Chris Cow or Kyle Brink, all that sort of stuff, their background isn't in publishing. Their background isn't in role-playing games. Their background is in computer games, um, and that tells me that their long-term plan from fourth edition is still very like before fourth edition. Their long-term plan to like move to a video, um, like the virtual table, and a more video game sort of interface for people to use is still very much the direction they want to move the entire operation. All right, so got everything placed. I like how that grid looks. Okay, so we are going to save as a clone. Kind of lukewarm in the movie right now. I really discovered how much I'm kind of not interested in fantasy. Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I agree. Like I wasn't super into. Let's see, how far should I take it? Yeah, 50%. That looks good. I wasn't huge into the movie in the first place, mostly because um, I haven't seen any evidence from Wizards that they've learned anything from their previous experiences. And by that I mean that a lot of the people in charge are still people who were involved back in the days of TSR and stuff like that, when they used to have a virtual grindhouse for um, in game fiction. So you had like Forgotten Realms novels coming out. You had Dragonlance. Pretty much every setting had a series of books attached to it. And the big problem that a lot of them faced is a lot of them were decent fantasy, but it wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. Like the stuff that was happening in them couldn't be replicated in the game, rules as read. Virtually everything required heavy, heavy levels of home brewing, lots of hand waving, and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm talking like, the big series, like the Crystal Shard, the whole, everything, pretty much everything that Duerden's ever done. Um, like all that. Like the fantasy was fine, but it wasn't D&D, and I don't think they've really learned that. And I think that when the movie comes out, it's going to be a decent fantasy movie, but there's going to be a lot of issues in it because Wizards doesn't trust their own content, mechanics, or world building when it comes to telling stories like that. Um, and like a great comparison to give is with Cyberpunk Edge Runners. You know, it's been cleaning up on awards and stuff like that in the anime world. It's been critically acclaimed, all that sort of stuff, and it did it all. And they could have just pumped out a quick cyberpunk aesthetic show, but they didn't. Instead, they actually they paid attention to the lore, they paid attention to the game mechanics, everything else like that. And I mean, absolutely, there's still some wiggle room for how they put stuff together and everything else like that. But um, in my opinion, at least, because they paid attention to how Cyberpunk 2077 worked, and by extension, how Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk Red work, it made the show stronger because there's less cognitive dissonance for fans coming into it. Like they don't have there's you don't have to reconcile what you're seeing with what you already know, and vice versa. If you're coming from that into either the video game or the tabletop games for Cyberpunk, and you're coming in from having seen Edge Runners, it's not a giant leap, and it's because they had confidence in their mechanics and confidence in their content, and Wizards just doesn't have that, and they never have, and so that's my big concern with the movie, is that it's going to be a really decent fantasy movie with D&D trappings, but that they're going to back away from a lot of the stuff that makes D&D D&D because wrong button, because they don't trust people to be able to accept the mechanics of the game. So we'll see how that goes. And of course, the TV show is in the exact same straits. I know this has been absolutely thrilling watching me change the transparency on all these, but having done that now, we have rough terrain. And so I am going to take this and I'm going to drop it down. Oh yeah, I like that. That looks a little weird. There we go. Alright, so just select some of the trees and bring the trees up a layer or two. Ooh, advanced setting. Brightness, transform. Oh yeah. So yeah, transform. This is where you get into some wild stuff, because you'd be like, start stretching and compressing trees, and yeah, it's cool. Blur? No, I don't want to blur it. I do, however, want to move it up. So let's see here. So move all these up a layer. I'll move the trees up a few layers. That's looking nice. A nice, simple map. I'll definitely move these tents up. There we go. Nice little encounter map, campsite, campfire. Got a beaten down area around it. You've got a couple of tents. I like it. All right, let's hit that save button. See here. I know the WoW movie. Good job. Well, that's the challenge that they're facing, and like it's one of those things. I think it's going to challenge the movie. Is that, as far as I can tell, it is a completely. It's set in Forgotten Realms. I believe that's been confirmed. I think I saw a map online somewhere. Someone was looking up like all the locations that have been confirmed from the movie. So that helps in the sense that that's a level of familiarity for a lot of people right there. Whether people like or dislike Forgotten Realms, totally different story, and it is happening in the Golden Triangle of adventure, which is like the Sword Coast, the North, and Savage Frontier sort of region. So that's hit or miss. But I think a big challenge that's going to have is that it doesn't have a okay, so I can export those maps now. So that was a nice, easy map to do. So let's move up to something a bit more challenging, and let's build what looks like this sacrificial worship area up here, or something. I don't know. Something's going on up here. So let's do that one next. Create a new map. Water battle card. Go and choose style. Yes. So yeah, the setting's going to be familiar to a degree, but as far as I know, all the characters are brand new, so that's going to be a problem because nobody's going to know who they are, and they haven't really done much to introduce the characters yet, which is always concerning to me when you have a film like this where it's an ensemble. Like it's not a single. It's not a movie about one person or a pair of people. You have an adventuring party, and that means they all have their own backgrounds and where's that dark grass? There we go. So they all have their own backgrounds, they all have their own histories, everything else like that, motivations, and they're not doing a good job at communicating what those are to people right now, and I think that's going to bite them. All right, and we'll come to stamps. Nope. Okay, so this one, I used that gravel around it to make kind of a weird shape. That's cool. Do we have cliffs? Is cliff an option? It is. Perfect. Alright, so let's just get a bunch of these out right away. Yeah, so they're not doing anything to introduce the characters or cast to us right now. And aside from, like the star power aspects. And I don't think that's going to help the movie a lot because we need to know who the characters are and we need to care about them. And if you're trying to do the full introductions inside the show, it always gets rough. Like, it can absolutely be done, Um, but I mean, like even in like you end up with some, you could end up with a not great situation. I think is the best way to put it. Okay, so if that's enough to get started. So let's see here. Just looking at this, of course, got to build weird shapes, right? Can't do something normal. So let's move all this stuff up here. We'll start by building the entry. Yeah, that's a rock solid point there. They are really relying heavily on star power to get the initial like boosts of interest here, and that is a dangerous road to take. Oh, I'm going to add where are those natural stairs. What can I make them look? Okay, so it's more or less this one. There we go. Yeah, yeah, like they're looking at it and they're saying, don't worry, team. The star power will sell us. We'll sell all this. Think I need to make all these bigger. Let's go with 175. Can always expand the map if I need to. I think I'm going to have to expand this. Let's see how this goes. Let's call it Hilltop for now. How big is everything? Everything's sized to 108. Let's bump that up to 110 to make it even. And then we're going to add a bunch of land. Let's see here, what I got a comment here. It's kind of frustrating the way they have the Lord expand. Yeah, although that very much falls into that whole thing I've been talking about for the last little while, where Wizards has divested themselves of lore. They're just not doing it anymore. And the big reason for that, as far as I'm able to determine, is simply that Wizards they fired or had all their they've either fired or had resigned or had or otherwise lost all of their world builders, like all of them. They started losing them at the end of third edition, lost most of them through fourth, and have lost the people who were, at least in my opinion, their best world builders in fifth edition have all left over the last year or so. They don't have, pardon me, they don't have anybody really left in house who can stitch together all the adventures and concepts into a coherent whole. They have a lot of great adventure designers left, and like like full disclosure, like designing adventures is hard. Um, like so much more goes into designing an adventure than I think people really realize. Actually, I'm going to bring this down to 100. I think that can work. A lot more goes into it than I think a lot of people realize, and it is a very specialized skill set within the greater hobby. But that said, it's also not the only skill set, and right now I think Wizards has a bias towards adventure design in their staffing. And so when you're really great at hammering together adventures, that doesn't guarantee that you're good at using lore as a springboard. And a really good comparison is how the team at Paizo, whether it's their like the actual people, like their permanent hires, or the staff, or like their permanent staff, they use their, like, for them, their lore as a springboard. They see it, they grab onto it, and they use it to develop something, develop ideas and concepts from. Whereas Wizards prefers to use their lore as a not even as like a vague background thing, and to give their adventure designers maximum flexibility to create. And the benefit of that particular system is that, yeah, like, you're going to get a lot of really cool adventures get developed. But the downside to it is that you'll get more and more, like, you're basically end up getting stuck in a situation where you have increasing conflicts. So it's like DC Comics. DC Comics is infamous for rebooting their universe like every 5 minutes. But they have to, because as much as they try to have some level of continuity after a reboot, eventually somebody says, why don't we start up a few more Batman comics? Why don't we start up a few more of these comics? And then they let people write and create and, like, run their own course in all these different comic lines without any sort of synergy or maintenance of continuity, until everything becomes a giant mess. Things get confusing, and so they hit the reset button and restart the universe. And with a role-playing game, that's harder to do. You can't, like, you can absolutely reset your universes, and, like, it's being done before. Like, I think the most infamous reset was Greyhawks coming into second edition, where they had a near mutiny on their hands amongst the Greyhawk fans, because the vibe and everything else had changed so much that they just didn't feel that it was even the same setting anymore. Whereas the way that Paizo goes about it, where they're constantly, like, where they use their lore as a springboard, they'll create a baseline and be like, okay, so this is what this area is like, this is what's vaguely in this area, what kind of adventures would you build with this information? Build an adventure, and then they take that adventure, determine a canonical outcome of it, and use that as the next part for the next springboard for the next adventure in the same area. And Oh, I was just trying to figure out what those two little dots there were. Just realized that it was just a little space that didn't get filled in. There we go. All right, back to these. So yeah, so they constantly build and springboard from, and it creates levels of continuity. The downside of which is that depending on how your players do, you may end up as a game master having to do some reconciling between the decisions made canonically in the game versus game's history versus the decisions that your players made. Something that I know that I've had to do. Sometimes players just do whatever they want, and as a game master, you get to figure out how to make it all fit back together. Um, so, oh man, building this cliff is nuts. All right. Um, and in my opinion, again, this is my perspective, not everybody's. I think that the latter method used by Paizo creates a stronger product because people can identify with it more easily. Um, it's never a case of wondering, like, for example, in the Forgotten Realms setting, we do not know what the canonical endings for any of the adventures are that have come out. We can guess at it, but so you're using lore as a springboard is how. Yeah, absolutely. Lore is a great springboard to do that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, Wizards now officially disagrees with that. They do not believe that lore has value as far as them creating it goes. They absolutely want you to create lore. They absolutely want people on the DM's Guild to create lore, but they don't want to have to be creating anything on their own, which is really rough. Because, like I said, like we don't know what the canonical endings are to a bunch of stuff, especially like world-shaking events. Like I know it's not one of the more popular adventures, but the Storm King's Thunder. The implications of the best ending that you could get in that particular campaign are literally world shaking. Like, it's the King of the Giants, or the closest equivalent thereof, literally deciding that, you know what, maybe giants can't get along with the smaller peoples of the world and come together to make something better and bigger. And like for a world like Forgotten Realms, where like conflict has been so ingrained into everything, it changes so much. Let's see here. I'm tired of other. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, like lore's the springboard. It always has been, and it's also a big inspiration. I've found, like, for if you have new players or even experienced players who are just in a bit of a rut, and they're not sure what they want to do or how they want to take things. There we go. I like that. Lore helps springboard. Like, they could just be flicking through a book and all of a sudden, like, wow, I really like this class. I like this subclass. I like this. I like that. I like this part of the world. And lights go off and everything gets really exciting. And I mean, that was one of the big. Let's see, I think I need pillars now. Hopefully, they've got pillars. Let's see here. Dungeon. Fallen Pillars. Oh, that works. Alright. some of these guys out here. Yeah. So I'll arrange all those in a moment. Now I need the big rock in the middle. Or sorry, statue is what I need next. Statue. This is gritty pillars. Nice. Oh, they don't have statues. Catalog and rock. Nope. Stone? And we are going to make that a lot bigger. That looks terrible. Okay, I think I used a stone from a different thing. Yeah, I think it was Fantasy Battle Maps. No. Ah, here we go. Was it Ruins? This one. Well, it's not too bad. It doesn't look too out of place. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Now let's start resizing things. Here. Weird idle. Check. Let's see how many. So we had our 6. We had a couple of trees and some bushes up there too. Nice. Lots of knocked over columns. Here, grab this. Foreground, yeah. Open the catalog. I need my soil. Kind of sort of the trail color I've been using. Ground simple intense. Okay, there we go. But yeah, sorry. Back onto like using lore. So one of my continuous comments for years now has been that when you're developing lore, you want to create places that people want to be from, not just go to. And like that's one of, to me, that's one of D&D's biggest weaknesses is that all the products they put out, they're always places to go, but seldom places to be from. And like that, a great way to compare and contrast those two is to look at how they treated Chult in at Wizards versus how Paizo took on the challenge of developing the Mwangi Expanse. And the Mwangi Expanse, when you read that book, it's a place to be from. There's tons of information in it about the peoples, the cultures, the development, all that sort of stuff. I should probably hit that save button. Um, there's a ton of good information in there, and as you read through it, you get excited about it. You're like, oh yeah, like this is absolutely a place to be from. And there's all sorts of hooks that are in there that are fleshed out enough that it feels you can do something with it. Like you can take it and run with it as a game master, and that you have a reasonable amount of support to succeed while you do it. Whereas Chult, it started strong. Like credit where credit's due, they dramatically expanded the lore of the place. Like they added Omu and another city whose name I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So they added cities. They imply a lot of things, but the problem is that it's just implied because they're trying to slam an adventure, like a reimagining of a classic adventure, into a setting. And like I remember when I was talking with people who were covering it at like higher levels than me, like like professional game reporters and stuff like that. One of the pieces of information I got was that when they and when I talked with Wizards was that when it was brought up, should we include lore with this? Should we develop this? Should we give more information? The answer was no. People aren't going to be interested in that. And as a result, it feels like a super flat setting. Like it feels like any random Sword Coast trade city dropped into a jungle environment. There's no supports for it. There's no logistics for it. There's no nothing. Like how it exists is a complete mystery. They took all the old lore that existed that they could have expanded on, could have clarified, could have done all sorts of stuff with it, and just went like, screw it, get rid of it, don't need it. And it just sort of snowballed from there. Okay, so we got all that. So we need some trees and bushes. So like it got bad. And you ended up they asked me an example. I remember them asking me this, like, give us an example of something that's a problem with this. And I'm like, well, you took pictures of people, or you had art generated of people in traditional clothes, like traditional African style clothes, from radically different parts of Africa and different climates and different needs, and then just showed them as an array of like the people in this small geographic area. This is how they may dress, and I gave the example of like, imagine if I made a game that was based in fantasy Italy, like an analog for fantasy Italy. And when I was asked for like what do people wear here, and I had a picture of like someone in medieval Italian dress, a kilted Scotsman, a Cossack, and like a Viking, and said, yeah, this is how people dress. It was like that was the sort of issues they had going on. And so as a result, like it was a place to go get the adventure done with, maybe do some dinosaur racing, and then get out of there and head back to the real world and where the real adventure was. And I thought it was sad because there was so much more that could have been done for the place. Let's throw a few trees here. Now I want to put that up on a little hill, so I need to go into hills again. It's like, why have a freaky rock if it's not up on its own little hill, right? this hill a little bit bigger. And we're going to drop it down a layer. There we go. Yeah, now we're talking. Now there's some more natural stairs. Yeah. The other ones. There we go. And I need to make these much smaller. 100, there we are. Alright, now we are creating. So this is going to be, this is very clearly a multi-level operation. Trying to see how many squares make it look good. $30 by $50, that's not too bad. Just increase the opacity of that. Okay, I'm gonna hit the save button because I'm liking how that's looking. Yeah, yeah, Wizards, like, they're out of the lore game more or less now. Like, there's whatever like low level baseline they present, and then they call it a day. And in their minds, like, the big reason they're doing it is because they keep saying that, you know, people don't want lore, but all the evidence that I see coming in runs absolutely counter to that. I see people constantly wanting lore. Like, it's one of the big things. It's what sells people on like Cyberpunk Red. The lore that's coming out of that, combined with the bizarre situation where it's like the intermediate, you know, I think it's really getting into it. And yeah, could start looking to Pathfinder lore. Pathfinder, yeah, getting comfortable with the mechanics. It's definitely a switch up, especially if you've been doing D&D for a long time. But it's I found it was close enough that it wasn't too bad to come over. The challenge that I had, and that pardon me, a lot of other people I see have, is that with D&D you really get used to having to homebrew to make up for inconsistencies, lack of information, all sorts of stuff like that. Whereas with Pathfinder, it really pays to get familiar with the core book and the rules in it, because they've got a lot of really good stuff in there, and it's all heavily integrated together. Like, it's mechanically a much tighter design. And once I sort of got that through my head and got into it more like that, it was so much easier to adapt to, because I wasn't fighting the system anymore. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Let's come around the edges of this rock. Pathfinder lore, yeah. It was free for a bit. No, I think you have to pay for it again now. But they had their traveler's guide. The PDF was free for a while this month, and it is a treasure trove of, like, great opening level Lost Omens era lore. It's really good. They've been engaging in light retcons from first edition stuff. So, like, if you have first edition things, that's fine. Like, there's been changes, but it's not like dramatic sort of like kick you in the face levels of change. And yeah, like getting that book is a great place to start for learning the lore for the place. Um, as they're putting out more books, all of their supplements like the Mwangi Expanse, um, what was it that their the Magic Tome they put out recently, all that sort of stuff, were really good. And yeah, fairly easy to get into too. Like it's not like their lore is it's deep enough. Like they're walking that line of it's deep enough that when you read it, you're like, okay, I get it. And you can see the springboards, you can see where you can develop it from, but it's not this overwhelming torrent. Like there's enough looseness to it that, at least me as a game master, I felt that I could work with it. I didn't feel like it was suffocating me or that it was like permanently defining an entire area as like, this area is this and has been forever, blah, 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 blah. And they're also the adventures that happen in the game have impacts on the world, which is something that I absolutely adore. So, for example, there was a first edition adventure that involved like flying pyramids in the Egypt analog for the place, and because time has moved forwards, they're like, okay, so canonically we've decided that the evil was defeated, and all the pyramids fell to Earth, except for it doesn't end there. Like, yeah, so now this whole area has like random pyramids and like giant stone monoliths crashed into it that are full of monsters that are adding to the challenge of like living in these places. Oh, nice. So yeah, so like they're doing stuff like that, and it's great. It's just great because it makes the world feel alive, and it makes it feel like the adventures actually mean something to the world. It's not just, oh, this is an adventure, blah blah blah. Its impacts don't matter. And like, a whole city got pulled into the abyss. Who knows what happened to it? Is it back? Is it gone forever? Is there now just like a gaping hole to the abyss sitting where it was? Who's to say? And how could this possibly affect the area around it? Oh, the giants may or may not have decided to come together with everyone else. So this is definitely the issue I have with D&D and doing organized play. Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. It's nice to feel like the adventures matter. It's nice to feel that the adventures actually do something. I'm really liking how this is coming together. I'm going to hit the save button because I got 99 changes. So one of the things I did with this map, I hadn't done with previous ones. You know what? You absolutely can. Like, I find for stuff like that, is if you want to create your own setting where the players start affecting things more and more, I call it the small big world, and it's a world where things are sort of like it's small scale, but the world itself is big. And I say it's small scale because where you start and where you start affecting things is at the local level, and then you sort of expand out from there into a wider world and start connecting things up, like that. So, for example, one of the adventures I had running for a while, the players started out in like a small, what was it? It was like a small city, large town sort of operation that had been cut off from the rest of the kingdom for over a decade, and their first big adventure was connecting their home back up to the larger world. Because like they had some magic communication, and occasionally like trade would manage to get through, but otherwise, it was just too dangerous um, to do much. So they connected that back up, and then from there, they started meeting up with different groups. Uh, you know, got it. Talking about they did trade deals with dwarves. They did. They ended up being essential to the peace treaty with the Elven nation next door, like all that sort of stuff. And none of it was like ground shaking, like save the world level adventure. And it worked. And I think that it worked because I kept the operation that they were in feeling local, imminent, and important. And then as the game progressed, they sort of like realized how much their players had done and how much impact they had had, and it became really rewarding for them because they were seeing the changes they brought into the world, and that concept developed from a different game where I had foolishly let the players like create their own merchant house, and things got out of control real fast, like real fast. And so, last note on this map before we go into a review of what happened today. So one of the things I've done today is I'm going to try to make this map as pretty as possible. So I will be coming back to this one. The layout is mostly done, but I want to go through the stamps and find um, some more things to put up and around it. Pardon me. To enhance it and to make it feel more important visually. Because right now it's doing pretty good, but I think that I could do a few more things. And one of the little things I did was around the bases of stuff. As I've scattered some brown, so it creates that little transitional zone. It helps show that maybe there's something else there, or there's wear and tear going on. And I'm going to do some more stuff similar to that to make it more visually impressive, because I want people to come. I want the players to come at this and think to themselves, "Wow, like something important. This is an important space up here. We need to pay attention to this." There we go. So Thursday, I'm going to come back and finish that up, and then I believe I'm going to move on. So I've done those ones there. So I've just got the tree and these bone spikes coming out of the forest. That's going to be interesting to work with. So we're going to probably on Thursday I'll be able to finish up these two, or finish up this one, and then get these two done, or at least started. And next week we'll move into building an actual little dungeon based off of this mine here, which will be a good time. So I'm just going to hit backwards here and open up. Here we go. So what did we do today? So we finished the East Ruins map. We laid out some, got like a little graveyard here, got a shattered stone, got some spider webs going on inside this ruin. Evidence that it used to be a little bit nicer. Oh, just realized I forgot a well. Is there a well? There we go. It's habit. I like to make sure that there's the space makes sense. So there, now they have their well. Yeah, so we've got a nice little house. What's left of a little house here, or some sort of a little something. Got some broken steps. So this is what happens: is you come back to a map you left, and all of a sudden you see all the stuff that you should have caught the first time. There we go. think that was 35 changes. Anyways, so that was created, and this is a nice, simple encounter map that you could utilize for spiders, low-level undead encounter maybe, or just some animals, whatever. The point is that it's a simple map. It looks decent and gives you as the game master some options for the sorts of encounters that you can run out of it. And over here, we've got sort of that sacrificial rock or old place of worship from the center of the hill. So we've replicated the cliff thing, and this is what I'm talking about is when I say that absolute shape isn't important until you get down to the encounter map level, because the way that this program works, unfortunately, is there's not one-for-one parity for stamps, and so you have to work with what you have. And well, I could in theory have tried to recreate the entire shape as it appears on the zone map. It would take a lot longer, and would probably involve a lot more swearing and sadness on my part in order to make it work. So I've recreated the cliff face, which is what was important. I've added a hill to the center here, which wasn't on the original zone map, which creates a nice... So now we have effectively have a 3-layer map going on here. There's 3 different levels of places to be on this map. Got nice natural stairs coming up. Got some nice natural stairs going up there. Got all these broken columns going on. Freaky statue. So this is from the regular battle map series, and fortunately the art style doesn't deviate too hard, at least to me. So it still looks decent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit more work on this when we're back on Thursday. To make it a little bit prettier, see if there's maybe some other stuff that I could add to it to make it pop a little bit more and make it more important, seeming that this is already clearly an important spot. And this is going to be a place where it really depends on what the game master wants to do with it. This could be an old site of worship for an old earth shrine that's fallen into disrepair and needs to be fixed up. This could be a place where some shady stuff is going down. This could be a place where they could summon something, or something was summoned. So it could go good or it could go bad. It might just be an archaeological site where they have to escort some scholar who's traveled out to the village who wants to do a dig here and research some of the stuff that's laying around. And all they have to worry about is regular bandits or beasts, stuff like that. So yes, it does look like it's like a sacrificial rock being overlooked by a terrifying statue, but it could be more, it could be other things, and those are things that as game master you sort of want to have floating around in the back of your head as you're doing these sorts of maps. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching with me today. I see, based on the conversation, at least everybody who joined me was joining me on Twitch, which is awesome. If you haven't followed me or subscribed there, please do so. And if you're catching this on YouTube or Facebook as a replay, like and subscribe to me there too. It's all appreciated. This has all been made possible thanks to all of my supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi. They're doing a great job helping turn this into something that's more financially viable for me. And yeah, as I said earlier, once all these maps are done, I'm going to be releasing them. I've already released the 90-minute village, so Balam Village, to my supporters. Then I'm going to be releasing all these encounter maps to them as well, in the same way, so they can do whatever they want to do with them or whatever they need to do with them. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and yeah, take care.